Hi guys, and welcome to Escape with Watch Reviews. My name is Steve, and today we're going to be reviewing the AVI Hawker Harrier HUD model AV4117. So I received this watch for free. I don't have to send the watch back, but you guys know the deal by now. It's not going to sway my review one way or another. You're always going to get my honest opinion on this channel no matter what, no matter how I get a watch. And if by the end of this review you want to pick one of these up, I'll be leaving a link down in the video description. That'll take you to the AVI website where you can pick one of these up. The retail price for this watch is $350 US. That's before any taxes or sales or coupons or shipping or anything like that. The watch comes in 3 different colorways that you can see on screen right here. The watch case is made of 316L stainless steel. It has a mineral crystal with AR coating, a push-pull crown, screw-down case back, 50 meters of claimed water resistance, and then the watch is powered by the Seiko NH35 automatic movement. So yeah, there's a lot to cover on this watch, so I say we skip the fluff. Let's get right into this review, but before we do a quick wrist check. Wearing the Roland F023, still an amazing watch on this, again, cut to size FKM strap that I've been rocking all summer long. So yeah, go check out the review for that. Now let's get to the dimensions. A case diameter of 44 millimeters, 15.7 millimeters thick, 22 millimeter lug width, 52 millimeters lug tip to lug tip, and on a supplied strap. It weighs 120 grams. So this is a pretty substantial watch. This is in the, the kind of the big piolot family. So it's meant to be big. It's meant to be chunky, and it definitely is. The thickness, really thick. I think it doesn't look too big just based on the overall length. So I think the proportions are okay, but it's definitely thicker than I would like it to be, and definitely bigger than I would like it to be. I'm typically in the 41 millimeter range, 42 at the most. So 44, it's not unheard of for me. I have worn them before. 52 is right at the limit of what I like to wear, but I do like the way that it does wear. It's got nice turn down to the lugs as well. The strap is plenty long as well. And yeah, I think it actually wears pretty good. So let's go outside and throw it on my wrist. And here we are on my 7.5 inch wrist, and as you can see, I can pull it off, but this is definitely right on the edge of what I like to my maximum. I mean, it's pretty long, it's pretty chunky. You do have decent curve down to the lugs there, as you can see, so it does kind of hug the wrist nicely, which is a bonus because yeah, I think it wears good for the size, but you can definitely see it is quite big. Lots and lots of play off of the crystal, obviously underneath this oak tree. Gives watches a little bit of a problem, but there's just lots of reflections going on with the dial and the crystal, and it's pretty interesting. It's definitely something different for sure. But yeah, I do think it wears pretty good for its size, despite it being so large. Yeah, it's not too bad. And hopping out in some direct sunlight here, you can see not really any issues reading this thing. I think they got enough air coating on the crystal that keeps the dial nice and legible, but I mean, it's just not a very legible watch to begin with. Thankfully, the hands are pretty bold, and so are the indices, so everything else just kind of disappears when you look at it a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely not the most legible just because of the design, but that's kind of what you're going for with this watch. So yeah, really interesting. All right, I'm going to go throw it on a couple straps maybe, and we'll get back to this review. And here we are on a strap that's a little bit more subtle than the previous one. Probably not the right style for it still, but my 22 millimeter strap is pretty limited, so this is what we got to work with. I do think it actually looks pretty good though. What do you guys think? And lastly, here we are on a nylon strap, just a single layer underneath the watch there, and it's still sitting pretty nice. I do think this combo looks pretty good. The dark case with the green always, in my opinion, looks pretty good. So yeah, that's the end of my strap show. Again, sorry, I don't have many 22 millimeter straps, but yeah, it's a couple options for you. All right, let's go back inside. Let's get back to the review. All right, so let's talk about the case finishing on this thing. So the case finishing, it's a mixture of brushed and polished surfaces. First off, you can see this is a pretty dark steel case, so it is PVD coated or DLC coated or some sort of coating on it to get it a little darker. There you can see the actual color of steel. So it is a kind of a dark gunmetal-ish color. I think it looks really good. You have a circular brushing on the bezel there, and then a polished lip on the side of the bezel. You have vertical brushing on the tops of the lugs, nicely done, nice and consistent, and then horizontal brushing on the case sides. And again, they do a nice job on it. This is my first AVI watch, and they honestly do a very nice job. I'm pretty happy with the case finishing. Nice, big, chunky, polished chamfers here. And, getting up real close, you can see they are pretty sharp. Those transitions right on par with something like San Martin. So I'm pretty happy with the case finishing on this thing. Pretty surprised. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but they did a pretty good job. Flipping it to the crowns side here, you have a dual crown system. We'll talk about this crown here in a little bit, but you can see the really cool detail that they have on that. It's kind of like a turbine wheel, and you'll see that throughout the watch as well. Really an interesting look to it. It kind of has this green band on it. Nice size though. It's just a push-pull crown, but plenty of grip on this thing, and it just feels really good. I think it looks really good. Flipping it over to the case back, the coolness continues. You can see again that turbine fan style. You have your 8 there. I'm guessing that's for AVI. Simple spec sheet around the outside here. Nice case back, really very nicely done. This is all super smooth. I think it looks awesome. Little notches here to get a tool into if you ever need to get to the NH35. Overall, pretty happy with the case on this thing. Everything's been knocked down, so there's no real sharp edges on it or anything like that. So yeah, really an interesting case. They did a good job on it. Again, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I'm pretty happy with their case finishing. All right, so we will talk about the bezel on this thing really quick. It is an internal rotating bezel, kind of like a compressor style watch. So this top crown here, it is not a screw down crown. So you can see here, it is a bi-directional bezel, spins both ways freely. There's no clicks or anything like that. I can kind of hear something clicking around back there, but there's no actual clicks to, the mechanism that sets it in place. So you're going to get a really good alignment on it. My only complaint with that really is it's kind of easy to bump, and you probably saw that early on. I have bumped this a couple times, so it's just something to note. I wish they would kind of tighten that down just a little bit. Again, that crown, really a cool design on it. The bezel itself, again, that kind of turbine wheel, it kind of has these lines that are at an angle, a little bit of skew there. You got your green triangle there, green up to 20 minutes, and then white after that. All that is loomed as well, which is nice to see. So yeah, there's a lot going on it. It's a really cool design though. I do like it. I just wish it was not so easy to turn. All right, so let's talk about the crystal. First things first, we will test for sapphire, and it is not sapphire. So the spec sheet calls this out as a single dome mineral crystal with blue anti-reflective coating, and that seems pretty much true. It's a fairly strong blue AR coating. I don't think it really bothers me too much just because of the dial. We'll talk about the dial here in a little bit, but yeah, it's interesting. I'm not a big fan of single dome crystals. You get double reflections, and yeah, there's reasons for my dislike of them, but this one is actually pretty good, half because it's got a lot of AR coating and half because it's mineral crystal. It's going to be less reflective than sapphire. So yeah, I think it does look pretty good. It's a very subtle dome, as you can see there. You get nice distortion at the edges, and you can see here that there is some printing on the crystal itself. I'm assuming that's on the bottom side of the crystal. So it's really interesting. That's where that kind of heads-up display comes from. Really, really interesting. I mean, it's cool. Very rarely have I seen someone print something on the actual crystal. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's nice and in your face, and it definitely stands out, that's for sure. So let's talk about the dial on this thing. The dial is really, really cool. It's got 3 different layers on it, 4 if you include the date there. So the base layer is going to be your color. So that's where you get that kind of silver to brownish black gradient. On top of that, there's a clear layer. I don't know if that's just plastic or whatnot, but that's where the minute numerals there are printed on, and the AVI branding and all that stuff. So that is printed, and it's kind of raised above that colored level. So you can see here, you can see the shadow of those numerals. And then on top of that, you have this minute track or minute ring around the outside, which houses your minute track, obviously, and then your hour indices. So really interesting. The hour indices are nicely done. Really actually impressed with those. Fully polished there. You got a double one at the 12, 3, 6, and 9. Single ones everywhere else. Got this inset date where you can see the previous and the upcoming date as well. So it's a very interesting and kind of cockpit-like design, which goes with the theme of this watch. I mean, it's all about aviation. I think it looks really cool when you get the light playing off of that that glass layer or that plastic layer. It kind of gives like an old school LCD effect. So it's a really cool and interesting dial. I think they did an awesome job with it. Obviously, it's a lot more busy than I'm used to, but if you're used to this, it actually works pretty good. And thankfully, the hands on this thing are pretty bold, so you can read the time pretty easily despite all the stuff that's going on the dial. So yeah, I do like the hands. They are matte black with solid white lume. Yeah, it's really cool, very interesting. The lume shot on this watch is really unique. I'm going to pop up a Lume shot here, and you can see it against a couple other watches in the collection. Sadly, the Lume is not great on this thing. You can see really interesting right off the bat, but the dial and the seconds hand, they pretty much fade right away. So after about 6 or 7 minutes, this thing was not visible to the eye. The hands, they hold on really strong, which I guess is good, but yeah, I wish the dial would be a little bit stronger. So the Lume on this is just not great. All right, so let's talk about the movement on this thing. So the movement is the Seiko NH35 automatic movement, hacking, hand winding, bidirectional winding rotor, roughly 40 hours of power reserve. It does everything you need it to do. They are accurate enough. This is one has been running. Can't really complain about that in a watch at this price point. So I'm happy with the accuracy on it. I'm happy with the movement on it. The crown here, like I mentioned earlier, nice, big, and grippy crown. I do wish there was a little bit of a lip under it. It's kind of hard to get access to it. So just something that they could possibly work on. I'm not really sure. So in the fully down position here is where you do your hand winding. Again, plenty of grip on that crown, and it does look really good. Trying to pop it out to the first position, this is where you change your date. And then the third position is where you set the time. This hacks the movement every single time. Nice solid feedback on it. The crown doesn't feel unsubstantial at all. I mean, it's just rock solid. Push it in, starts up the movement every single time. I've got no real complaints with it other than being a little bit difficult to access. Yeah, that's my only real complaint with it. Other than that, everything is a-okay on this one. All right, so let's talk about the strap on this thing. So I'm sure you guys saw it during the Lume shot. This is a lumed strap. So the green that you see on here, at least on the outside, is lumed. It's a pretty bright lume. It lasts a long time. So yeah, it's an interesting look to it for sure. You have a leather on the top side here, nicely stitched in. It kind of has a pilot style to it. You get this extra sewn in reinforcement in the buckle holes there. Everything is done pretty nice. I got to say, the strap itself, fairly stiff. I'm not going to say stiff, but it's definitely not as flexible as just a full leather strap. But it is comfortable. It does conform to the wrist after a while, so I've got no real major complaints with it. You have your branding here, Harrier HUD on that side, AVI on this side. You do have quick release spring bars. It's a 22 millimeter strap, and it tapers down to 20 millimeters at the buckle. So you can see here you have two floating keepers there, and then you've got your fully brushed AVI buckle. Matches the case nicely. It is signed there. Nice substantial buckle. It feels good. So I do feel like the strap could break in a little bit after some use, but right out of the box, it's a little bit stiff. I wish it was a little bit softer, but yeah, thankfully 22 millimeters, you'll even be able to find some other strap to fit it. This is a pretty bright and pretty loud strap. It's not something that I would wear it on. Yeah, it's a little bit too much for me personally, but if you like black and green, this is going to be a perfect setup for you. So there you go, guys. That is the AV8 Hawker Harrier HUD automatic. A really interesting watch, a big pilot watch. I do like the dial on this thing is super interesting, and that's kind of what I think you're paying for. The dial on this thing is incredible. The crystal with the printing on it is really cool. It's a big chunky watch, so if you're not into that, I would skip it. But if you like these big watches with lots of heft to it and thickness to it, and you know, it feels substantial. That is for sure. It feels substantial. It's not a cheap feeling watch at all. I think the case finishing is excellent. I think the dial is awesome. The strap, not my style, but it might be your style. Thankfully, you can swap those things out pretty easy. So this one will be available on the 23rd of August. Yeah, I think it's awesome. If you are interested in it, go check out the link in the video description. Thank you to AV8 for sending the watch over. And yeah, I think that's it for me. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.